I'll get the recording. Are you gonna announce it or?
Yeah, wait until it's announced to start the recording.
Yeah. But are you fine with Pucci modding or?
Yes, I'm fine with Pucci.
I Pucci, I'm giving you owner role. Don't nuke the server.
What?
All right. Good luck, guys.
Let me announce it on my server.
Yeah, wait for other people to join. Let's get at least 30 and then we'll start.
Nigger.
What's up, Haram? What's up, Oshi? Eat. I'm sorry. He's saying I did not tell you hi, bro. I'm sorry.
Yo, okay, so can we get a ban on Haram, please? And
Wait,
also, I doubt that other people are going to join because of what happened earlier. So,
yeah, that's
yo,
true,
you should have announced. You should have announced that there's a verified, solidified judge, bro.
We're just making another everyone ping, bro. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, 22 people are not going to join after what. Alright, we can do it at like 25.
Yo, hello.
If Haram leaves, so do I. Yo, ban Haram. Ban Haram.
Do not ban Haram, bro. Wait, do not ban Haram.
Yo. When's the debate?
Like
I
right
think
now.
it's right now. But we
Please don't ban Haram.
Can we stop letting randoms up, please? Can y'all move everybody down? That's not the owner or the moderator / judge. Like,
yeah, Yanni, there's a judge. Pucci.
Okay. Well, I own the server code in it, so well.
Eat.
Oh my!
I probably just hold myself over. We're gonna put it back. Hey, can y'all move Yanni down? His aura is just like I'm making my debate skill less than it is.
Someone on stage likes men. What?
It's 26. Look, we can start. Hold on, let me start the recording. But before I start the recording, actually, just to make the positions clear, you're pro-life, correct? Well, so I already started it. So for the recording, it's going to be me versus Gyro. He's pro-life and pro-choice. Look, I'm just going to be asking a reason as to why my pro-choice wouldn't hold to be true. The official judge and moderator's pussy. But what was the question?
Okay, can you outline your pro-choice view again?
Yeah, so look, it just seems to be the case that egoism is something that holds in correspondence to explaining situations / scenarios in society, which I feel as if pro-choice allows for the best maximization of utility when it comes to an egoist perspective. So I'm going to be using that as a backbone to question the pro-life view, because it seems that pro-life and pro-circumstance doesn't hold. So can you outline your pro-life view real quick?
Yeah, I'm pro-life, meaning that I think that is generally going to be wrong to abort, giving some exceptions, like a rape exception, like if mother's life is in danger exception. Sorry, but what you just said.
Wait, just to be clear,
can I be clear? Wait,
hold on. Let me ask you a question real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but so for those scenarios that you gave, what is the thing in which makes them outlined? What highlights the situation so you don't include it in your view? For example,
I just think that generally you're going to be justified in defending yourself from negative experiences.
Okay, and then what's the determination of negative experiences there?
I mean, I think it's just going to be trivial. What are negative experiences?
I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Like, for example, when you say it's trivial, hold on. When you say it's trivial, I'm assuming you mean, when you say that's a trivial, I don't really know what that means there, because negative experience is obviously going to be relative. So is there supposed to be an objective determination for negative, or is there a relative determination? If it's relative, obviously that's something trivial, sure. But obviously, I'm not going to grant.
Experiences would obviously be relative, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think if you ask most people if they would feel good or bad if they got raped, obviously they would say they felt bad.
Okay, so so let's type this out so there's no confusion with the judge when it comes to judgment. Rape. What else?
Rape, life of the mother being threatened, and maybe some other examples, but those are the two immediate ones.
Okay, he noted it down. Okay, so what's the argument for pro-life that goes against my egoist perspective that defends pro-choice?
Hold on, just to be clear. Okay, so you made two claims, right? You said that, or what your position hinges off of.
I made multiple claims.
Okay. Two is multiple, by the way. But egoism is true, and then given that egoism is true, then pro-choice is true, right? So just to be clear, okay, when you say that you said that we hinge off of it, it would be the best explained by a pro-choice position, yes?
That's not what I said.
Okay, can you clarify?
Yeah, so for the judge, I'm sure the judge heard this since he was noting it down apparently. What I said is that I seemingly have a reason to believe that egoism holds the most accounts when it comes to society and explaining scenarios within society. Additionally, that seems to be maximized best by pro-choice, which is my backbone for questioning positions such as pro-circumstance and pro-life. And I'm just going to call you a pro-circumstancer since you're not hard pro-life. So what would the argument be for pro-life that goes against my egoist perspective?
No, I just need to be clear on what you mean by egos. So when you say egos, you just mean that generally what's going to be right or wrong is going to be depending on your self-interest or an agent's self-interest.
Look, so I mean, that's completely fine, but I just want to clarify further for Pussy, although he's heard me talk about this before. When I say I'm an egoist, I just mean to say something along the lines of the determination of the morality of an action is off of the desire or self-interest of the imposer, specifically the individual imposer of the action. So, for example, if I perform the action of eating a candy bar, that action's morality is going to be determined off of the desire that I possess. And when I say, just to be clear on terms, self-interest, desire, will, I mean the same thing.
Okay, that's a little bit vague. Okay, do you think that
what is vague?
Whether or not desire is going to be identical to self-interest? And the reason for why that's vague to me, to me, it just looks like there's a bunch of cases in which your desire obviously not aligned with your best self-interest. Like for example, if I want to, let's say I want to masturbate, and masturbating is generally going to be considered bad. Obviously, I have the desire, but it's not going to be in my best self-interest to masturbate, obviously.
Well, when you say your best self-interest, I don't really know what that means there under my semantics because those two are identical. So when you say that that's something that wouldn't be true, well, that's only under your semantics. I would say that if it's in your best, I would say that if it's in your best self-interest, your best is most likely going to be your immediate or which one maximizes the most amount of pleasure because people not limited to, by the way, Pussy, is not limited to, but people mostly model their desires off of the pleasure they're going to get if it were the case that the desires were actualized. Or in other words, they model their desires off of the hedonic states that potentially would be actualized. So it would follow that.
Can I intervene really quick just to like be very clear in this this current discussion? What you mean, Infinity, correct me if I'm wrong with this, how you're defining egoism is how the morality of X action is evaluated by the desires of the imposer. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep. And then just to clarify, when I say desire, self-interest, will, I mean the same thing. So when he says the best interest, when you add best there, that's obviously going to disqualify desire itself from being identical with that phrase because I'm saying desire as a term is identical to the term or will or interest or something along the lines of that. When you add best there, that's now a conjunctive phrase. That's not just a term.
Okay. So let me just run
between self and interest there. Go ahead.
Okay, let me just run this view down a little bit. So you think that, let me just run a hypothetical. So for example, let's say that I'm walking down the street and then some female, some girl just tries to pick at me. She tries to annoy me. And then she's annoying me and then I rape her. Who do you think actually did something wrong there?
Who do I think did something wrong?
Yeah, like who would you say that the girl is, let's say, unjustified in defending herself from me raping her because it's not in her self-interest or her desires, and then I'm justified in just raping her because it's in my desires?
This is why I don't really like when y'all try to give reductios that are retarded. So look, when you give reductios, this is just for the future. I'm going to answer the question, by the way. This is just for the future. Yeah. When you attempt to give reductios, at least try to stray away from trivial answers. So if you say something along the lines of, in response to my position, which is that all dogs are black, if you respond by asking a question, which is the following, so is that dog by you black? I'm obviously trivially going to answer, yes, it is black. But just to answer in response. Look, so if it's compatible with the self-interest / desire of the individual who's getting their will imposed on, for them to get their will imposed on, then obviously that's going to be something which is moral. If it's not within the desire, if it's not compatible with the desire in a sense where it's a positive compatibility, obviously then that's going to be wrong relatively. But at least in respect
did you hear the hypothetical?
I do not. Hold on.
Did you hear the hypothetical?
Let me finish. Hold on. I do not hold the desire. I do not hold the desire to witness someone's will getting imposed on negatively. So it would be bad for me, which was the question.
Wait, okay. You're not in the hypothetical, but in the hypothetical, the girl is imposing her will on the guy first, and then he rapes her in retaliation, and then she's trying to defend herself from being raped, and then so you have two self-desires which are conflicting. How do you actually?
Maybe you weren't listening, but the desires being conflicting are irrelevant because it's talking about the individual desire. That's the determination of morality.
You said the word impose, right?
Can I finish?
You said the word impose, right? Hold on. You said the word impose, right?
Can I please finish? I'm sorry. You're the one who wanted moderation, but you're cutting me off currently. But to finish what I was saying, look, the incompatibility between two desires are irrelevant since it's not the consensus of desires that determines the morality of an action, but rather it's the individualistic desire that determines the morality of an action. So if this person's imposing on the other person, they have something which determines the morality of their action, which is obviously their desire. That's trivially going to answer your question. But if the other person's imposing on them, it would just be relativistically good on their end, but not on that person's end. So I can say that the original person imposing on the other dudes, which is the girl, by the way, the original girl or slash female imposing on the other person's desire would be okay because they had the desire to do so. So it would be relativistically good, while the other person, it would be relativistically bad for them, at least that specific action, because they don't want to get their will imposed on. And then for me, which was the question, it would be bad for me because I don't have the will or desire to watch someone else's will get imposed on negatively.
Okay. So do you think that we're justified in sending the guy to prison for raping the woman? Because according to you, he didn't do something wrong.
The legal system is irrelevant to my morality. So when you say, am I justified? I would say, can I please finish real quick to answer your question?
No, can I clarify first?
Look, y'all really do this. Look, you ask a question to get mad when I don't answer, but when I try to answer, you come yo. Now, to answer your question, when you say that you're justified in sending them to prison, I would, which is why I'm answering the question. Anyways, so when you ask the question, which is the following, am I justified, or I apologize, are we justified in sending them into prison or sending them to prison? I would say that's a way to restrict the lack of my desire being actualized. So I would say you're justified personally because, like I said, and I already answered this question, I don't possess the desire to see someone else's will imposed on negatively.
Okay, so
if there's something, let me finish. If there's an action which stops that desire from being imposed on, which is the desire to not witness others' desires imposed on negatively, then I will obviously be up for that. And then obviously moral justification is going to be off of my desire. I'm morally justified in performing an action X, which is, for example, eating a snack bar. If it is the case that I possess a desire in which is compatible with that action, what the fuck?
Okay, I'm not sure where you keep adding the, like, I don't want to witness this part. Like, you're not in the hypothetical, bro. But when I say, okay, well,
if it would be okay
about the prison, you can think of a prison. You can think of a prison as just a punishment system. Generally, you want to punish people that did something wrong, obviously. So
I don't care about the punishment.
Who do you think did something wrong? Do you think that they both? Do you think that they both? Hold on, you think that they both did something right?
Well, I'll answer the question after. You can ask that question again. Let me just clarify in response to the punishment.
Yeah, I'll just tell you this.
It's irrelevant whether or not that's fine. It's irrelevant whether or not they're getting punished. The entire point is, even if they're not getting punished, if they're put in a place in which limits them from imposing on my desire, that's all I need. But what was the question that you tried to ask under your breath?
Wait, sorry again. The desire.
What was the question that you tried to ask under your breath?
I need to clarify first. What'd you say?
Yeah, I said that the punishment that they're getting or receiving is irrelevant to whether or not they're limited to imposing on my desire, which is the entire point of my answer initially.
But what does that mean? Like, their punishment is not limited to how they can impose on my desire? What does that mean?
That's not what I said. I said their punishment is relevant. So whether or not they get punishment is irrelevant. Let me finish. Whether or not they get punished is irrelevant to the point or topic of placement. Their placement is the thing in which imposes on my desire, because if they were not at that scenario, I would not witness that scenario. Therefore, my position, or at least that specific will or desire, would not be imposed on. So if they're removed from that location, then whether or not they're getting beat or not does not fit the qualifications of my will not getting imposed on. The only thing that fits the qualifications, at least in this hypothetical, would be their removal from the place or location.
Wait, I don't care about your will, bro. I'm just asking if the guy did something wrong when he raped someone.
Oh my God. When you say that if the guy did something wrong, if it's in his desire, let me finish. If it's in his desire to do so, it's relativistically okay. Most people would generally say that is wrong. Why? Because most people possess the will in which is incompatible with seeing other wills imposed on, negatively speaking. So that person, at least relative to his will, did something okay. Relative to the person that he's doing it to, he did something bad. Relative to most people, he did something bad. What does that mean? Relative to most people's intuition, he did something bad.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
What does what mean?
Okay, when you say that the guy did something wrong, but most people would say that he did something right, or sorry, not the other way around. He did something right relativistically to him, but then most people would say that he did something wrong. Okay, so the action...
I'm sorry, I can't really understand your enunciation.
It seems kind of weird.
Wait, repeat
what
you said.
Okay, you're saying that, okay, well, the guy did something right realistically to him, right? That's what you're saying. And then you're saying that, okay, well, other people...
he did something okay because he's attempting to actualize his own desire, which is at the top of my hierarchy, that attempt to actualize one's desire. Yes, correct.
Okay. So, and it would be wrong, let's say, if you witnessed it, or you would say that it's wrong because you don't want to actually see or hear.
No, that's not. No. I would say that it's wrong to me because I don't want to witness someone else's will imposed on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, right? So, it seems weird to me to say that the action is moral index to the agent, but it's immoral index to people who are not doing the action. What does that mean?
Wait, just to be clear, it can possibly be moral relative to another agent. It doesn't have to just be relative to the individual agent imposing the action. Can I finish, please? Can I finish, please? Obviously, when you cut me off, you're going to say retarded shit because you don't know what's going on. So are you going to cry for moderation? because that's what you did initially, but now you're cutting me
You're
off.
so confused. My bad.
Anyway, so to finish what I was saying, just because it's relativistically good and okay to him doesn't mean that it's not relativistically good and okay to someone else. I just clarify that most people would find rape morally impermissible, which is why they would say relativistically to them, it's not okay. So when you say it's kind of weird, that presupposes your view. I don't think that is weird at all to say
No, but
that.
that's gibberish, though.
This
That's
person,
gibberish.
let me finish. I don't think it would be
That's
weird to
gibberish.
say at all that this person believes what he's doing is okay, or it is relativistically okay to him. But most people would say that it's wrong, incorrect, morally impermissible, intuitively wrong, etc. There's no problem with that.
No,
You
but
type in the
again,
chat that I'm
you
confused doesn't mean
you seem to write. You seem to hold on. You seem to run into some concept issue. You're saying, okay, well, this action seems wrong. We have intentions against it, but the action itself, indexed to the agent, which is what you mean by something is moral or immoral. It's indexed to the agent that's performed the action. It's actually not immoral. So generally,
No, it's not
you know
indexed
that
to the
rape is
agent.
moral.
It's indexed to the agent's self-interest.
Okay, so that would be also indexed to the agent. That's what I'm saying.
I just want to clarify it's indexed to his self-interest, nothing else.
Okay, so you're saying that rape is moral for the rapist. That's what you're saying.
Rape is relativistically moral to him, but is generally considered wrong.
Okay,
This isn't
so
like a reductio or anything. This isn't a
No, it is.
reductio. I hope you know that. Like, can you get to the point? Like, y'all all try to do this. This shit does not
It's
work.
a bad category error.
Yes,
It's a bad
to the
category
rapist. The rapist most likely. Anyways, yes to the rapist. The rapist is most likely okay with raping someone, but nobody else is. So why does it matter? I'm not okay with it. That shit weird as fuck.
category error.
I don't think
It's a
you
category
are.
error.
Unless you're a rapist. How's
It's a
it category error? Go ahead. How?
Because what does it even mean for an action to be moral?
Well, I'm sorry. So your reason as to why it's a
It's
category
moral-
error is a
Can I give
question?
moderation? Hold on, stop. Okay.
Wait, so now
saying
you're
that-
crying for moderation
You're
even though
saying
you
that
cut me off.
stop. Okay.
So your reason
You're
as to
saying
why it's a category
You're
error is
saying that
because
the
it's a
action.
question?
You're saying that the. You're saying that the.
chill.
Yeah, thank you. So you're saying that the action is moral relative to the agent, right? So you're saying that rape is moral relative to the agent, and you're saying, okay, well, I would consider me being infinity, I would consider it wrong, or other people would consider it being wrong, because it would actually frustrate my desires and my self-interest. Well, that seems
Yeah, what's
retarded
wrong with
because when you say something is moral or immoral, you're going to be talking about
Ditto?
the agent that did it. What does that even mean? That's like saying.
I'm sorry, wait, what was that? Wait, hold on, what was that?
That's like saying.
Wait, no, I didn't hear you. Repeat what you said. We're going to be talking about what when we say something is immoral or moral?
You're going to be talking index to the agent. That's like saying shit tastes like shit to me, but it tastes good because it tastes like chocolate to you. That's retarded because it tastes like shit to me.
Wait, hold on. What's wrong with commenting on relativistic facts when invoking talks about morality? What's wrong with that? You saying that that's wrong, retarded, or weird doesn't really. Can I finish? I'll let you finish. Anyways, you saying that's wrong, retarded, or weird doesn't mean it's wrong or retarded or weird just because you say that. So when you comment on it being a category error, I'm going to need the reason. Yanni said that was a leading question, but guess what it led into? It led into a retarded ass point. So what was the argument? I'm sorry.
It seems okay. So how? Okay, if it's not indexed to the agent, how do you actually?
Yo, wait, before you be finished, can y'all please delete that speech? Oh, my bad. What was that, Gyro?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so okay, if you don't think that an action is moral or immoral relative to the agent, how do you actually determine whether or not it's moral or immoral in general?
Okay, maybe you weren't listening.
You obviously don't ask everyone in the world. I need to finish. You obviously don't ask everyone in the world if this case of rape is justified. Maybe some people would actually have the desire to witness that rape. You don't say that something like that is going to be, a valid or a good pragmatic way of actually determining whether or not something is right or wrong. Obviously,
why not?
Is right or wrong,
I'm
it's
not
going to
gonna.
be indexed to the agent. It's very simple.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it doesn't. Yeah, other people's desires are irrelevant to me. The only reason why I mention other people's desires is to clarify that it's not a reductio to the judge. I'm not saying Pussy's retarded, but there's a past history of judges who are retarded who think that bringing up rape during an egoistic perspective debate is a reductio or something like that. So I just want to clarify. I can say that relativistically, it's okay for the rapist to deem rape okay, or it's okay for the rapist to rape. But most people, let me finish. Pussy, can you
What the fuck?
Can you please mute him, Pussy? Can you please mute him, Pussy? Yeah, thank you. So just to be clear, yeah, Pussy, this is just all for you. You saying it's relativistically okay for the rapist to rape doesn't really cause a reductio, because that's why in response I would say that, sure, but it's not okay to me, it's not okay to you, it's not okay to most people, and it's generally not okay intuitively either. So when you say that, well, you're not going to evaluate the average person's desire. One, we can do that. That's why we have surveys. Secondly, that's irrelevant to an egoistic perspective. Even independent of our evaluation, even if there doesn't exist a good evaluation or valid validation when it comes to people's desires, as long as I have an evaluation of my own desire, that's all I need when it comes to an egoistic perspective. So that's irrelevant. But what was the argument?
Okay, but that's the issue. What if I have the desire to say that, okay, well, let's say actually let everyone who's a rapist actually go out and rape everyone. That's the point. Like, you can't say that I'm sorry.
What's the question?
I can't say that you're wrong. I can see you.
I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you finish.
Well, obviously that's something
I'm gonna let you finish, but I just want to clarify. Was the question the following?
Imposing on the world the most.
Hold on. Was the question the following? What if I want to say that I have a different desire?
Yo, come on, bro. Come on, chill. Let Gyro say what he was saying, and then like you continue, chill.
Okay. By the way, I just need to be clear. When you started speaking, you said that the other people's intuitions are not really relevant to you. Is that what you said? You said they're relevant.
I'm not answering any questions until it's my turn to speak. Can you please finish your argument, quote unquote?
No, yeah, bro. It's a clarifying question. Is that what you said?
Okay, maybe you didn't listen. So let me speak in retard terms.
I heard what you said. I heard what you said.
Answer the question. It's my turn to speak.
Did you answer that?
I heard what you said. Can you answer the question, please?
Look at chat, bro.
I'm just gonna.
Is this
I'm
you,
gonna
bro?
assume. I'm gonna assume what you said is irrelevant. Is that what you said? Because I mean that's just a concession because that's how you evaluate.
Oh, Pussy, can I answer his question, Pussy?
But then,
Answer.
Can you be muted while I
question.
answer his question and elaborate? Because I'm going to elaborate. I'm not just going to answer the yes or no. So can you please mute him?
Yeah, sure. Do it quick though, because I have a question for you.
Okay, thank you. So what I said was, yes, from my egoistic perspective to work, I don't need to value the consensus of desires because my egoistic perspective talks about my individual self-interest. The only reason why I mention the consensus of desires is to, quote unquote, highlight why your fucking reducto is retarded. You trivially giving a scenario in which is answered under my position doesn't attempt to give a reductio at all. So I'm just explaining to the judge that, yes, relative to the rapist, rape will be okay. But guess what? Most people wouldn't consider it that way, perceive it that way. It wouldn't be okay to most people. It would be intuitively wrong, generally speaking, etc. So you invoking that one scenario where it's okay does not mean that most people would say it's okay, or does not mean that your reductio is true. Additionally, it's the case that you saying, well, it seems weird to invoke this type of language because I could just say I have a different desire, which is incompatible with you. Why can't we invoke our relativistic facts into conversations? What's the problem with that? Why can't I say, wow, it's wrong to me, therefore I wouldn't perform that action, or it's wrong to me, therefore I have a different view of that person in comparison to you who thinks it's okay, it's an okay action, I have an okay view of that person. What's the problem with that? You saying that it's a flaw, it's a category error. Your reason as to why it was a category error was a question. This is retarded. You sound like a wrong SpongeBob, Pussy. What was your question?
Yeah, just a quick clarifying question before you guys continue. When it comes to this is tracing back to the origins of the conversation. You defined and like you even agreed to like how how you defined egoism to be. You said egoism is going to be like how the morality of X action is evaluated by the desires.
Wait, before you give your definition, I don't want to cut you off. Wait, before you give your definition, like I don't want to cut you off or anything. I just want to clarify for the recording. Did I ever say that the consensus, and I'm not saying that Gyro said this either. I'm not going to even defend that. Did I ever say that the morality of actions are determined off of a consensus of desires?
No, well, okay, no, you didn't bring up consensus. Now, I'll unmute you, Gyro, real quick. But before you continue, let me just like to clarify this because I'm tracking the conversation, but I just went back to like the beginning notes, and there's something like I'm concerned with. So what you said is that you agree with me to the definition of egoism would be the morality of X action is evaluated by the desires, quote unquote, self-interest / will of the imposer. Now, I'm pretty sure what that means is that like
individual
an
imposer,
action. Yeah, okay. And then would you say that this definition of egoism is going to align with some sort of like, wait, I unmuted Gyro, what the fuck? Would you say that this definition of egoism would align with some sort of like a relativistic perspective on morality?
I'm fine with morality being relativistic under this egoist perspective, sure. But even if it were the case that that wasn't true, conventionally speaking, that's irrelevant. It's only the case that that matters if I'm not outlining my view. But I'm pretty sure I clearly outlined my view to people who are able to comprehend basic shit. So I hope Gyro is someone who fits under that category. And if Pussy, if you don't understand something that I say, you can ask. I'm completely fine with answering all questions on your end. But go ahead.
Okay, can I speak now?
Yeah,
okay,
continue.
Yeah,
are you done with your question, Pussy?
Can I finish?
No. Yeah, that's all I wanted to clarify. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Gyro. Now we have to hear you talk.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so for the last part you said, the reason for why that's relevant is because when you only speak about morality like in a non-universalizable way where you say, okay, well, this is moral for me, it's moral for you, and because it's moral for you, it's immoral for me, like all these conflictions, it's just generally going to be hard to actually talk about morality, just super unpragmatic. I already explained why with the prison analogy. And when you say self, by the way, because now you just want to say, okay, it's relativistic, I need to be clear on what self means. So what do you define as a person?
Is he cutting out or am I cutting out?
Wait, did I cut out? Or?
Hello?
Hello, did I cut out?
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. We already heard the retardation that came out of your mouth. So, look, in response to the first thing, whether or not it's
did I
universally
cut out?
instantiated is completely. Look,
No,
yes,
I'm
you
not
cut
done.
out, but we heard what you said, bro.
I'm not
It's
done.
like
I'm not done.
it was a
I'm not
word.
done. I'm not done.
Oh
I'm
my
not done.
God! Go ahead, bro. Even though you, go ahead. Apparently, he's not done.
Hold on. Let
Am I
Gyro
cutting out or
finish.
is he cutting out?
Hold on.
Yeah, thank you.
No.
Okay, so when you say
Let
self,
Gyro finish.
yeah, okay. I mean, okay, so there's a lot of issues with just the self part because if you want to invoke it relativistically, okay, I don't have to explain why
But can
saying
I
that.
answer the question?
Oh, well, can I finish? Hello? Like, mute him. Just mute him. Pucha, can you mute him? No, Pucha, can you serve mute him? I don't want him to unmute. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I don't think I have to explain why saying that the rape is moral for the rapist but immoral for everyone else that witnesses it or for the girl getting raped is wrong or retarded. I'll just go into why saying it's relativistic is very, very vague in itself because I don't know what your account of person is or personhood is. So when you say self, what do you actually mean there? What is the self? What does it mean to have a self?
Sorry. Wait, I'm sorry. So I got muted just for him to repeat what he said, even though we all heard it. And I clarified before I got muted that he didn't cut out for that part.
Christ.
Okay, can you please mute him while I speak so I can answer this retardation? This is bad, bro. Please mute him. We can just have moderation. He's crying so bad. Okay, I'm gonna assume that he's muted. I don't know if he muted himself or something. But one, a universal instantiation for morality when it comes to conversations, I don't grant is the only way to properly conversate and evaluate moral situations. Secondly, you saying that it's difficult to invoke morality onto scenarios or have moral discussions just because I believe in a relativistic standpoint or moral standpoint doesn't mean anything. One, I don't grant that it's something which is hard. I agree. Let me clarify. I do agree that it's hard for retards. Sure. But retards shouldn't talk about stuff such as ethics or philosophy, generally speaking. That's why we have things such as layman's, or let me clarify. We have retard, layman, and then we have philosopher. We have philosopher, Cinta. We have retard, Gyro. And then we have a layman, me, the average person type shit. So, look, listen when I clarify this. One, you can't justify that it's something that is difficult. I agree it's difficult for you, but you can't justify it's typically difficult or generally difficult. Secondly, it being complex or difficult doesn't defeat the fact that it's still a way to conversate about morality. So even if it was the case that this relativistic standpoint of morality is something which is consistent and holds to be true, we're talking about something metaphysical. We're talking about metaphysics, which is complex. So it's completely fine for something complex to be difficult to talk about. For example, God. God can be complex and difficult to talk about. Just because it's difficult to talk about God doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. That's retarded as fuck. And then finally, to respond to the last point, you say it's very vague because you said vague. You didn't even pronounce it fucking correctly. So I don't know why the fuck you're doing this speech shit. But anyways, what you mean? Obviously, what you meant to say is vague. You said it's very vague because you don't know or I apologize, what I mean by self or person. Let me clarify. Personhood is irrelevant here. By self, I just mean obviously relativistic to that individual who's promoting the action. I already clarified this. So although I'm not giving a specific definition of self because I don't deem that to be relevant, I'm talking about the referent of self. So I'm giving a description, not a definition. So when I say the self-desire or the self-interest or the self-will, I'm talking about the will that is only held by the person promoting the action or the entity promoting the action. There you go. That answers your question. So in sum, basically, whenever I say that I have my self-interest, that means that this self or this desire isn't based upon a consensus, at least when it comes to its existence. It's something that exists relative to my mind or my intuition, because I believe in two categories of desires. That's basic. What the fuck? Even Harama SpongeBob understands this. So go ahead and give the argument. Nigger.
All right, chill. I gotta unmute. Gotta chillax, man. What the fuck? Hold on. All right, there you go.
Am I muted? Okay.
Yeah. My fault.
Okay. The reason for why it's difficult, you asked me that in the first place, is, I mean, obviously it's just going to be vague to say, okay, well, it's going to be complex talking about, well, if someone actually committed a wrong action, if there's 7 billion opinions and 7 billion different actual perspectives on whether or not that action is right or wrong. So how you actually determine that action being right or wrong, if you just index that to yourself, that's not really clear, like I said, because everyone else just perceives that to be right or wrong. So when you have a conversation, like let's say, okay, well, do we think that this guy is a bad person? Do we put him in prison? Do we think that he's a threat to society, which is what the prison system is? Then yeah, you can't have those conversations when you say, okay, well, yeah, actually, I think that what he did is right, or what I think what he did is wrong, or he thought that what he did is right, or what he thought what he did was wrong. That's retarded. And then your account, like what you just said about persons, is like that. It didn't clarify anything. You just said that you describe it based on like your own intuitions. What does that even mean? Because I don't know what it means to describe an action to a person, or say that
I didn't even mention
like your action
intuitions.
is your action. Why is he speaking? Or describe an action, or describe an action. Bro, what?
Yeah, my fault. Really quick, yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure Gyro's talking about.
Wait, no, don't help him, pussy, don't help him.
No. It's not helping. I've already like noted this down. I'm saying that I'm pretty sure Gyro's talking about when he asked you to define like self. He's trying to get clarification on like what that would mean.
Yeah, because what you just said,
I know.
Because what you just said is okay. Well, you describe the action of the morality based on like what on the agent. Like, what does that mean? That doesn't clarify anything. That just begs a question.
I just told you. Begging the question.
Okay,
are you done? I don't mean to cut you off. Are you done? Wait, before I answer your question, are you done? Like, are you done with all your points?
No, I'm not. Okay, let me ask you again. What is the person? Now you can speak.
Okay, so maybe you're not listening or something, but look, maybe you can only understand things that I said 5 seconds ago, but in the past of the debate, like about 3 minutes ago, I commented on how I'm not going to answer questions until it's my turn to speak. Okay. So are you done speaking? Okay, so Pussy, can I take that as him done speaking so I can respond to the points?
He's done speaking. Yeah. If he says he's done speaking.
I mean, he's not talking though. He's not responding because he's scared. So I'm going to assume
he's nothing to respond to. Can you actually give me an account of what person is and stop running?
Okay, can you please mute him? Like, that shit was not rhetorical at all, by the way. Like, you sound like a retarded Yanni. But can you please mute him, Pussy, so I can respond to what he said?
To be fair, if I mute him, are you going to answer the question that he just posed to you?
Well, of course, there's not a single question that I dodged, and I believe I already answered the question. I just don't think you were listening, so I'm going to tell you again as well, Pussy.
But the question was, what is a person? To be fair, at least answer that, or at least how you would go around that. I'll mute him, but...
I mean, I already answered that question. Look, I'm going to respond to everything else, and then I'm going to answer that question. One, where you said that there's like 7 billion options. I don't agree that there's 7 billion options / opinions. Everything has a base opinion, and then you can get into reasons at the end. So there's only 3 options, actually. There's a neutral standpoint, there's a positive standpoint, and there's a negative standpoint. Now, the antecedents in which infers those conclusions / consequences can be completely different. That's completely fine. But as long as we reach a consequent in the first place, that's all we need, which is impossible to not reach a consequent. You can be neutral because you're agnostic and you might not have any knowledge of the situation, or you may just be neutral because you're retarded and you don't have an evaluation / determination of what's right or wrong within that scenario. You can be someone who's on the negative side. You believe that this person did something wrong because of your mental evaluation of the situation, and you can say that they should go to jail. Or you can be on the positive side and say that this person should not go to, I apologize, should be on the positive side and say that this person should not go to prison or something like that because you deem them as a positive person. You don't believe that the action that they performed is good or something along the lines of that. Now, you may have different reasons, but guess what? They all infer the same conclusion. So what you said about there being 7 billion opinions, I can grant that, but not relative to what you were talking about. There's 7 billion opinions relative to the reasons, sure, but not 7 billion opinions relative to the consequent. So the consequent is obviously non-identical to the antecedent. This is basic logic 101. I can send you Carnades after this. We can watch it together with Careless and VC. And then in response to the other shit that was obviously retarded, how do we determine something being wrong? So, Pussy, and let me talk to you when I say this, because he's just going to say it's question begging. But this is a question that obviously pertains to my views. So he isn't asking me to justify the view or anything like that. This is just a question under my view. If it's hard, how are we going to determine something being wrong? And then the answer is going to be simple. We determine something being wrong off of the self-interest / desire / will of the person imposing the action. So relativistically to that person, if we were to ask him the question, is that a right or wrong action? He's going to answer relative to his desire at the time when he was performing the action. If you're asking me, I would answer based upon the compatibility with my desire at the point of the time of the action being performed or imposed on. Basic. Yay, I already answered this. Now, moving on to answer your question now, what is a person? A person is an entity. What is a self? Because that's what he asked for, Pussy, not what a person is. He asked what personhood was initially, but he was conflating the personhood and then the self. So, let I'm going to say this again. Whenever I say self, and Pussy, please listen to this specifically. Whenever I say the self-interest, and I already answered this, so please write this down. I'm going to say it slowly this time. Whenever I say the self-interest, I mean the interest in which exists relative to the individual entity that isn't based upon a collective of people. So I mean, when I say self-interest, I mean my interests or your interests, an interest in which is relative to the individual, something which exists in the essence of an individual, not just the essence of something else, meaning it exists in virtue of the individual, not in virtue of a collective group. So when I say my interest or my self-interest, I mean an interest in which is imposed onto me in virtue of my consciousness or my intuition. That's irrelevant to a collection of people or a collection of consciousness or a collection of intuitions that are independent of my person. And then my person is just going to be referring to my essence or my entity. And obviously I'm an entity. So in sum, there are only 3 consequences in which are non-identical to the antecedents. And yes, Shinra, I just said that you're going to be watching this later.
Infinity gets slammed, and then we're going to be reviewing it.
In response to the other thing, yes, by self, I mean relative to my conscious / and or intuition, which is going to exist in my essence. And then by personhood, I just mean most likely my consciousness or me as an entity. It can differ depending on what situation I'm invoking it on. So go ahead.
All right, before I unmute Gyro, just to be clear, you're defining self with a definition of self-interest, correct? I noted the definition. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the self just talks about the person, which is the topic of conversation. But when I say self-interest, that's different from self. So self-interest is a phrase. Self, I gave a definition for as a term. So if he wants me to define the phrase, which is what he meant to ask for because he can't clearly speak, to define the phrase for a 4th time, I'm pretty sure, self-interest is just talking about the interest in which is collected as an individual, either derived from one's intuition or one's consciousness, not derived from something else, meaning in virtue of something else, such as a collection of other people, namely a group, or a collection of animals, etc. Go ahead.
All right, hold on. Let me unmute Gyro really quick.
And by derive, I mean possessive, by the way. Possession.
Continue, Gyro?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is retarded. For the first part, the antecedent there, which you said, obviously the opinions there could be not different in all cases, but the antecedent there would be different, which is the desires. That's what I'm talking about. The viewpoint there would be different. So you have 7 billion different desires, or 8 billion different desires to actually consider to say, okay, well, whether or not an action is right or wrong. So obviously, if I want to rape someone and I do rape someone, that's according to you going to be relativistically good to me. But then, if we want to, as a collection of humans, actually you decide what to do with me, and if I did a bad or wrong thing, then obviously we can't have those sort of conversations. That's why if I raped your mother right now, you wouldn't say that, oh yeah, this guy should go to prison, because according to you, I did nothing wrong, obviously. So next, with the entity stuff, you said that you said that in essence is going to be identical to the person. Well, I'm going to be in an argument for that because you're just ignoring accidental properties. So when you say, okay, well, you're basically ignoring Leibniz's law about personal identity or identity in general. That invokes a very specific account of identity.
He's gone, bro. Where did he go?
Someone kicked him. Hold on. I got you. Where you at? Jesus. Okay, he's back. Yeah, that,
I don't know, like, Yanni's kicking me if that was Yanni, but move Yanni down. I don't know why he's up.
It wasn't me. It wasn't.
Then why did you come up as soon as I got kicked? Please move him down. But Gyro, repeat everything that you said.
Christ. I mean, sure, I guess. For the first part, you're just massively confused because obviously, like, you might not have 7 billion different opinions, but then the desires there is what's going to be different, right? So you'll have 7 billion different antecedents to actually consider. So when you say, okay, well, like an action is wrong, you would say, okay, well, it's relativistically wrong or right in in respect to that person that actually did the action. But that isn't really clear to me. Like, okay, because would you say that the man that raped your mother, let's say, like, would you say that we as a collective of humans would say that he would go to prison or he would not go to prison? That's kind of my issue. So that's retarded. And then when you say, okay, well, a person is the essence, or the essence is identical to the person, or I think you said something about consciousness as well. Well, for the essence part, that invokes a very specific account of identity, which I would need an argument for because you're not considering accidental properties in that. And I mean, consciousness part is just retarded because we seem to value or not really consider the desires of, like, let's say, pigs and dogs and cats as much as we do of humans. And so if you just index that to consciousness, then you would have to give me some kind of reason to say, okay, well, we'll value my desires over a cat's desires, let's say.
Are you done?
No, I just stopped speaking, dude.
Yes, people take pauses in their sentences. So I'm gonna assume that he's done, Pussy. So I don't want to hear like moderation mute him. So one, that last point. I'm sorry. Can you please mute him?
Wait, are you done, Gyro? Though?
Yeah, obviously.
All right.
Okay, so the last part was irrelevant when you say, well, you have to prove that we have a reason to value our desires above the animal's desires, or I have no reason to assume that we have a blah, blah, blah. Look, one, when you say that we value, I don't care about what we value, I care about what I value. I value my desires over an animal's desires. I value my dog's desire over maybe like a 98-year-old homeless man that I've never met before. It all depends on what I value, not we value. I don't care about an argument as to why the values of a human are going to be above the value of, or the values of an animal, or the desires of humans are going to outweigh the desires of an animal. That's irrelevant. That has nothing to do with the argument. Secondly, the legal system is irrelevant to the moral system, at least when it comes to invoking language, explaining scenarios. Thirdly, when it comes to 7 billion people having different desires, the desire is different from the opinion. Maybe you're retarded, but your opinion, which is just your mental judgment, is completely distinct from your desire, which is just your will / self-interest. So whenever I give my opinion on something, that's distinct from my desire, because my opinion could be, for example, Kuro lost to Princey, but my desire could be Kuro beating Princey. Those two things are incompatible when it comes to the actualization of them. However, I still hold both of them. So people can give their opinion, which can only be 3 things, which is what I said. The 3 things being, because I'm going to repeat it for you, retard, a positive opinion, which is, for example, this person did nothing wrong, they're a good person. A neutral opinion, which is, for example, I can't determine them doing something wrong or bad, or I don't. Hello?
Yeah, you cut out. Can you continue?
Yeah, I can't determine them doing something wrong or bad. Or finally, the negative opinion, which is the following: they did something wrong or bad. Okay, those are 3 opinions, 3 mental judgments you can have towards a scenario. Okay, so your desires, you can have 7 billion, whatever. The antecedents, which is the reason as to why you infer your opinion or you hold your opinion, you can have 7 billion, whatever, sure. But that's irrelevant to our opinions. And which I'm not saying this, Pussy, listen, if, Pussy, I do not want to get hold on judgment with some bias shit. If I were to say that the legal system was based upon the consensus of opinions, if I would say that there's 3 opinions, there are not 3 desires. There are not 7 billion opinions. There are 3 opinions and there's 7 billion desires, 7 billion antecedents, whatever. So we can say that there seems to be a trend that exists when it comes to opinions on certain scenarios due to people's intuitions or due to people's own desires. Rape feels bad, or seeing someone get their will imposed on negatively feels bad, or that's something that goes against my will. Therefore, I hold the opinion, and let me clarify, most people model their opinions all for their self-interest. That's just one scenario where they don't. But in this scenario, they do. So I can say, therefore, I hold the opinion that rape should be a crime. And then also let me clarify, what their opinion is irrelevant to what the punishment is. So they can have an opinion and say that this person should be punished. What the punishment is specifically is just up to the government. So although, yes, there exists 7 million people with 7 million conflicting desires, not 7 million conflicting opinions, but maybe 7 million conflicting desires, it's not the case, or 7 million conflicting reasons, it's not the case that those 7 billion people are the people who are determining what the punishment is for the quote unquote criminal, but rather it's a collective of people. For example, the government, let's say 10 people. I'm obviously not saying that the government is only 10 people, but this is just for example. Let's say 10 people. The 10 people are looking at the scenario and modeling their morality or whatever they want to do and punishing that person off of their mental judgments, okay? Which is completely fine under certain scenarios. So although, and this is just how society works, 7 million people may disagree with the government's opinion. The government still puts them in prison for a crime that they did. We can still invoke language on the scenarios. There's no argument as to why we can't. You're repeating yourself. And then finally, when you say that you need an argument for my account of identity because I'm not including accidentals, actually, I'm one of the only people in this community who does account for accidentals in my theory of identity. So that wouldn't even work. And then when you say you want an argument for my identity theory, It's just the case. I'm going to assume that you mean if it were the case that I weren't including accidentals, because you said because it seems as if your accidentals aren't included, or if you weren't including accidentals in your theory of identity. So to answer your question, I am including accidentals in my theory of identity. Desire slash the will of an individual would be accidental. That's not something that you have in virtue of you being you. I'm saying that you have it independent of a collective desire. I'm not saying that you have it just because you are you, which is what an essential feature is. I'm not saying that's why you have it. I'm saying that it's something that's relativistic to your consciousness, which may be modeled off of outside influences. But it being modeled off of outside influences is irrelevant when it comes to whether or not it's possessed because you are you. The fuck? Anyways, go ahead.
Give me a second. Computer's very slow today. I don't know why. All right, there you go.
You typed out that already.
Okay, so I mean, everything besides the essence part is just jibber jabber. We already talked about it. So when you say, okay, well, the desires there are going to be accidents, and then you account for that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So how do you describe the accidents to the person? Then you're saying that the person has the self-interest, but the self-interest they're not essential to the person. How does that happen?
How does what happen?
Like, how can you prescribe that? You say that the desires they are accidental, but how can you prescribe it to?
Well, it just depends on what entity we're talking about. So if we say, I apologize, were you not done?
I'm done now.
Okay, so it just depends on what type of entity we're talking about, and obviously just depends on the analytical criteria. So obviously, if I don't include features such as desires slash will slash the self-interest of the entity in mind, then that's not going to be a part of the accidental, or I apologize, the analytical criteria, meaning that there's a disqualification for those being essentials, analytically speaking. But if I were to include those in the analytical criteria for an entity, which is the topic of conversation, then obviously they're going to qualify for being essentials. But it seems to be the case that you can be you, or I can be me, or people would consider Pussy to be Pussy independent of its current tense desire. So independent of desire to go get a piece of candy or something like that, Pussy's still considered to be Pussy. And currently I'm only talking about consideration because I'm the one referring to you. I'm the one referring to me. Whether or not this is an actual account of identity is irrelevant because we're talking about considerations here. So I consider Gyro to be Gyro because it seems to be the case that he fits and qualifies under my analytical criteria of what Gyro is, or the existing criteria for Gyro.
Okay. But so using like language to justify it?
Justify a consideration account.
You like justify that. Okay, well, let's say I'm a person, then you would describe certain self-interests or certain desires to me because, I'm this person, you identify that to me.
A person is a person if and only if they have features X, Y, and Z. You have features X, Y, and Z, therefore you're a person. Yes, I'm explaining that to you using language, but that's just something actual. So the depiction of X, Y, and Z onto your entity, meaning it's accentuated from the object, those features at that, it is the case that you possess those objects. Therefore, independent of the language I'm using to explain it to you, you're that entity. However, when it comes to the consideration is distinct from obviously the actual theory, but the consideration is the only relevant part here because I'm saying you are you. So I'm invoking language to describe you, at least in this debate. I don't care whether or not you are actually you, as long as we agree to an assumed consideration. The fuck?
Okay. I mean, I just, I don't see like a reason to say that the person would just be identical to the essence. Because obviously that I agree that essences exist, but it would seem at the very least plausible that persons don't exist. So if, let's say I'm an anti-realist about persons, then ethical egoism would just be trivially false because you're saying, okay, well, either I'm prescribing it or I'm prescribing morality to something which just doesn't exist because you're saying, okay, well, self-interest, but self-interest doesn't actually mean anything. Or you're saying that it's actually impossible to grasp whether or not anything is right or wrong under ethical egoism because persons don't exist. So which one is it?
Okay, one, egoism can be true even if my consideration of desires are incorrect. So even if my evaluation of an existing desire is incorrect, if there is something that ultimately matches up with the view that I gave, it will be the case that egoism holds to be true. Secondly, when you say that it seems wrong due to the possibility or probability or plausibility, either one of those three, which I don't grant, because there's no identity relation. I just don't grant that. So when you say a person, I would just say that a person is talking about an entity with a group of features. That's what I would say. And that's obviously the case under my semantics. Obviously, if you go by a different type of semantics or some different semantics, that's completely fine. But that's irrelevant to what I'm talking about. Since I'm here to convince the judge and I convince you. And then the conventional semantics would obviously be an object in which instantiates features. That's what would be a person. So, because let me clarify to all the retards, a person is not a human. That's not what people mean when they say person. When they say that something holds personhood, they don't mean it's human. They don't mean it's Homo sapien. That's not what a person is. So I would say that a person is identical with essence. Essence is just the collection of one's features. That includes accidentals and essentials. Existence is going to be something which is a part of your essence. Therefore, everything which is instantiated from an object or from an object will be a part of one's essence. And then features are just properties. I apologize. The collection that we have are properties, and the properties are identifying features. You're able to identify existence from non-existence. Therefore, existence will be a feature. In other words, a property. So it will be something in which is included within your collection of essence. And then when you say that you don't see a reason to accept it, I'm not here to convince you, as I clarified. Pussy, write that down. I'm not here to convince him. I don't really care about what he sees. But can we conclude? Like, this is going nowhere.
Okay, no. I mean, for the last point, I just don't find it relevant. You just gave me. You said, okay, well, essence would include existence, and then existence would help us identify like set of properties. I agree that existence would include a set of properties. Is that what you said?
What was the last part? I'm sorry. You said existence would help us identify a set of properties?
Yeah, pretty much. Is that what you said?
No, I said existence is a property.
Okay, but I'm asking you why holding a set of properties would actually define a self or would make you self. So when you say, okay, well, in the first part of what you said, my desires about something else I said, like, you do not see how that question works? I'm asking
Well, let me
why
answer that question.
your account of self is true. And so when you talk about identity relation, by the way, that even brings up a whole another issue because, okay, well, you say there's some kind of identity relation, there's no identity relation. That would help us identify whether or not an action is actually moral, even indexed to the agent that's doing the action, because you would have to capture that the action that you're doing is going to be in line with your self-interest at the time of the action.
So look, let me clarify this.
I need to finish. So if you're constantly changing, if your desires are constantly changing, then obviously you can't say that an action is moral if they're not even in line with your own desires. So you need some kind of identity property there as well, or identity relation there.
Yeah, so one, oh my God, Pussy, listen, please. One, it is the case that biconditionally existence will be something which is completely fine in my view because it's a reference. Secondly, and let me clarify again, Pussy, because maybe you didn't hear it. It's a reference, it's a reference point, meaning biconditionally it would be something which fits under that. Secondly, something is a self or something has a self if and only if it is the case that there's a reference point. There is a reference point for these features because they're able to be identified from the opposite language-wise, meaning linguistically, or even ontologically. We can use ontological parasites to verify things in which exist.
Wait, what do you mean by reference
point? For example,
wait,
give me a second, please. Wait, please give me. Okay, you can ask at the end, please. And then to finish real quick, or let me clarify again. My identity theory or my theory of identity does not have to be true. It can be wrong. But as long as my theory of consideration when it comes to identity is true, which it seems to be the case that most people would grant it and it's conventional, that's all I need. So I can say that I can go outside and see this person, they possess certain Y feature, at least in my perception. Well, that's all I need. I don't need my actual theory of identity to be true, which, by the way, it is true. I already justified it being true. Something has to exist. If something exists, that means that there's an identifying feature because there's an opposite of non-existence there. So there exists a feature, so there's a reference, so there's a self because you're able to reference it. Or there is a reference that exists.
You're making a jump.
Finally, and then finally, let me finish. And then finally, when you say that, and I just used a point earlier that I want to like make sure because I don't want to get hold with biased judgment. Again, look, when you say that it's hard to invoke language like this, you just went circular as fuck. And secondly, there's no problem with it being difficult. Metaphysical conversations can be difficult, or discussions about the metaphysics can be difficult. But when you say that your desires are constantly, when you say that your desires are constantly changing or something along the lines of that, that doesn't entail any inconsistency. I can say that my desire for now is something which is compatible with the action I perform. Therefore, the action relative to the desire will be something moral. My future desire may cause the future action to be moral, but that action that was in the past, it's still determined off of the desire that was held. So we're talking about the compatibility between desires and actions. I would say that this action, for me to perform this action, it's moral to do so because it's compatible with the desire that I hold at the time. Now, in the future, you may hold a different desire, which is incompatible with a past desire. So I can say, I want to feel this certain level of pleasure. Then I perform an action which allows me to feel that certain level of pleasure. So it's okay at that time. Yes, we can have co-temporal facts, or we can have temporal facts. It's completely fine. And then in the future, I can possess a desire in which states that I don't want to feel that level of pleasure, and that feeling that level of pleasure is something in which I want to avoid at all times, even in the past. I can say that, therefore, the action which attempted to actualize, or I apologize, impose on a desire, which was something in the past, would be wrong, even though that's not even conventional. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what it means to say that the desire that I have now is incompatible with an action that I made in the past. If it were the case that action's morality is determined off of the desire that I had at that current time.
Okay.
But yes, relativistic temporal facts can exist. There's nothing wrong with that. Go.
Okay. So, by the way, you said that most people would agree with some of your position, or one. So, just because most people agree with some metaphysics doesn't mean that the metaphysics are true. So, let's start with that. And so, if you're invoking,
that's the point of motivation, not justification.
If you're okay, whatever the fuck you said. When you say, okay, well, there's some kind of relative identity, because what to me it sounded like you were invoking some kind of relative identity there. It's hard to capture if it's only relative identity. It's hard to capture one's action to match one's self-interest adequately. So, at what point does it actually? Because they change, like I said. So they could change it. Really.
Hold on. Why is that relevant to my view? Especially if it is the case that you don't even need. And let me clarify this.
By the way, I didn't respond to
hold on, let me finish. Actions don't even need to exist for my position to be true. Even if it were the case that actions were never performed within society, as long as there's a basis of determination, that's all my position needs. Because what my position states is that the determination of actions are off of the self-interest. Meaning
but that's the point.
We're just talking about, hold on. My view is just talking about normative. Anyways, my view is just talking about the normative consideration / determination, not the action itself. So actions don't need to exist for my position to be true. And then secondly, when I talk about a collective of people / a consensus, or what's normatively assumed or agreed up to, I'm talking about motivation, not justification. So this is just motivation to believe my position. That's not justification.
Bro, the point is, if you're going off the actual self-desires to say that an action is right or wrong, then if the actions could have, if the desires could have changed while you're actually doing the action, then it seems weird to say that the action properly captured your.
But why does that seem weird?
We can properly capture your desire. So you can't say
we can have mental. We can have moral evolution.
Immoral. It doesn't matter or not. It doesn't matter or not whether or not actions exist or not. I don't even know what the fuck that means. But if you can't adequately capture it, or you have issues adequately capturing it, then it just seems weird.
Okay, look, so one, maybe you weren't listening. So moral evolution and mental evolution can exist. I can say that this action was good at X time because I had a desire in which was compatible. And like I said, this is what I said at the start, Pussy. That's why niggas need to listen for more than 3 seconds per point. Look, most people model, it's not limited to, Pussy. But listen, most people do this. Most people model the desires that they have off of the amount of pleasure that they would gain from the potential actualization of the desire. So they can feel as if, because this is obviously what they think, because they're the ones modeling the desire, they can feel as if X action is going to bring them Y level of pleasure. And then once they research more after actually performing the action, they realize they were wrong. So they now consider that action incorrect because, or I apologize, they now consider that action incorrect because of the new epistemic access that they have, which creates a new desire, which is incompatible with the past tense action. So relativistically, in a temporal sense, that was a fact. At some point in time, this was true. The same as at some point in time, when I'm walking, my left leg is in front of my right side, or my right leg. So the statement, my left leg is in front of my right leg, is relativistically true at that certain time. So it's temporally true. It's temporally true. And then when I continue walking, my right leg is now in front of my left leg. So that statement is now false, and it's evolved and remodeled into a new statement, which is that my right leg is in front of my left leg. So that's just a temporal fact. Temporal facts can exist.
Bro, I didn't ask if it's. I didn't ask if it didn't exist or not. I'm asking how you can capture it. So if they constantly change it, they could constantly change it. No, if they, bro, can you relax? So if they could constantly change or they do constantly change, then at the time of the action, you would say, okay, well, like, how can you actually capture the desires to that point of action? Like, how can you say that?
Capture the desires.
How can you say that the action there would adequately capture the desires? It's super vague. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, you can capture desires off of a posteriori validation, obviously. So I experienced this desire a posteriori, and then I experienced another desire which is incompatible with the original desire. And therefore, due to mental evaluation and rational evaluation, I just want to clarify those are the same thing. I just want to change up the words so Pussy understands. I can determine that these two things are not the same. So I'm capturing the desires, and then we have an existing determination. So off of that capture of the two desires, I would base my determination off of the capture. Like, this is obvious. Can we
bro, you just told me that you captured by capturing it. That's what you said.
That's not what I said. Okay, I think you question back with literally every argument you gave at the start. Let's conclude.
Okay. Bro, you said is oh my gosh. I mean, we can conclude after this, but just to be clear, you understand that for the identity point before, having like I think I already went over this.
I don't grant my theory being relativistic.
I need to be super clear. When you say reference point, that just begs the question on the identity part. I don't agree with properties actually identifying or accounting for itself. That was the whole point of the.
Why not? What's the argument for that?
That's an affirmation. You need to prove that.
Wait, hold on. Just to be clear, when you say an affirmation, you just asserted it there as well. When you say you don't agree, that obviously means that it's either the case that
it's something which is needed for a position. I'm just not convinced of it. Very simply.
So you're not convinced?
Yeah.
That's
so you first and foremost, bro, can I finish? You need to argue for that.
I was the one talking. What the fuck? Bro. Yo, Pussy, can you mute up so I can finish what I was saying?
Whatever, bro.
Hold on. To be fair, Infinity. Come on. To be fair,
I know. I asked the question. I was going to elaborate the same as he elaborated on his question. So we allowed him. Okay, again, I'll finish. Thank you. So, look, one, the justification, real quick, is just going to be the case that, which I already gave the justification. Hopefully, Pussy was listening. Look, something within reality exists because there obviously exists some type of possibility, impossibility, necessity, or some type of modal referent. If a modal referent exists, then we can use an ontological parasite to validate the existence of its opposite. If we can validate the existence of its opposite, that means at least two existing things have values when it comes to variables. If they have values when it comes to variables, that means that there exist features under my semantics. My semantics is what I'm using. It's irrelevant to your semantics. I don't care about your semantics. And then when you talk about relativistic identity, look, if that's not the position I described, which it isn't, by the way, at all, then I still win. So can we conclude?
Bro, I understand that you have features. That's not what I'm asking. You can have features and have certain properties without having a person. That's different. You understand that, right?
Yeah,
that's why I said I grant essence. That's why I said. That's the point. That's the whole fucking point.
Let him finish. Infinity. Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, so if I grant that essences exist, and then I ask you, okay, why do you think persons exist? Then what do you think the contention is there? Obviously, I agree that you have a set of defining properties which you would describe with language. Like, let's say you define numbers with language, or you say numbers with language. Doesn't mean that you think that numbers exist. Or when I say, okay, well, myself or you, and I identify you by that, or certain features I identify you by, doesn't mean that your person exists. So if your person doesn't exist, then ethical egoism is just trivially false. Very trivially.
Okay. Yeah, the entire point is that I define.
Hold on. After you're done answering to what Gyro just said, just go for conclusions.
Thank you. Look, Pussy, I already said this, but the entire point is under my semantics, personhood and in essence are the same thing. So if I were to say Pussy holds a personhood, that would be identical to the statement that Pussy holds an essence, or he has an essence in which defines him. Additionally, when we talk about, for example, your analogy defeats itself. When we talk about numbers, I believe that numbers are a language that we use as an attempt to describe quantities within reality. So language is an attempt to describe things within reality, or things that exist hypothetically, or things that exist in potency. So when we talk about numbers, they're supposed to attempt to describe quantities within society. Those are just that's a different category of language. So obviously that's going to be identical to language because it is language. It's just a category of language, which is not identical to the main primary factor of language. The fuck? So either way,
bro,
that's the same thing. About semantics, let's conclude.
Can I say one more thing?
No, let's conclude. Let's conclude.
No, so I'm gonna say one thing. No, bro. I didn't say. Hold on, stop. Can you stop? Can you stop?
What are you?
He's confused about the numbers point. He's confused about the point.
Okay, the entire point is that. The entire point is that if features exist. I wasn't even.
Infinity. Hold on. He was gonna answer like something.
I'm about to say
no, he's confused, bro. I need to clarify for you. I'm gonna make it.
You can say that after, but let me finish what I'm saying.
No.
The entire point is that if you agree to features existing, obviously, bro, can I finish? Yeah, if you agree to features existing, the desire is going to be a feature. That's obviously what I was talking about. And then the person is irrelevant specifically because that's identical to essence there. Then that's just my semantics. If your semantics disagree, that's completely fine. You can say by personhood, you mean something else, but that's irrelevant to what I'm saying. Because when I invoke personhood, I'm invoking essence. If you grant essence exists, then personhood exists under my view. And then desires are within essence. So there's no confusion or problem with egoism. I'm still yet to see the argument for pro-life or egoism. It's just question begging. But go ahead.
Okay. Bro, obviously I'm disagreeing to your semantics. I'm asking for an argument for your semantics. But besides that, when you say numbers, I agree with numbers being a part of language. But the point of the analogy was to say that, okay, well, when you use numbers, you don't have to commit yourself ontologically to them existing. That's the point. So when I describe persons or I identify persons by certain features that someone has, bro, that's totally compatible with what I'm saying. Like, huh? But besides, you're just super confused, bro. Like you question back several times, then you didn't listen to me. Like, what was the point, bro? We conclude.
Okay, you can say that when you're concluding, but just to respond real
Yeah.
quick. One, you saying I'm question begging doesn't mean that I'm question begging. You question beg. You haven't explained why I question beg. Secondly, I never said that you confused numbers and then disidentified them from language. It's not what I said at all. I was just clarifying to the judge. This is what I believe. And then thirdly, you telling me to give an argument for my semantics. I'm not going to do that. One, I don't even know what that means there. Secondly, you can't explain what that means because you realize you're writing. I'm not going to justify a definition. And then thirdly, we're going into this debate using my pro-life position. I'm the one, quote unquote, seemingly arguing for my pro-life or pro-choice position. I apologize. Thank you, man, for the correction. I'm the one arguing, quote unquote, for my pro-choice position while you have yet to give an argument for your pro-life position. I'm just using my semantics, and then you grant ultimately everything that I'm saying, semantically speaking. So when you say that you deny my semantics, it's irrelevant. These are just terms that I'm using to describe certain aspects or references. What the fuck? I don't care about giving an argument for semantics that convinces you that you can't justify what it's
that was the point. That's like saying, okay, well, yeah, you agree to, like, let's say an apple existing, and therefore, because I define God as an apple, then God exists. But
yes,
point is what I'm saying. Point is what I'm saying. If you just describe, okay, well, desires as a feature, and I agree to desires existing, and then that's what you define as a person. Bro, that's this. You need to prove that, because if you don't, then desires and features exist without a person to actually ascribe them to or prescribe them to say, okay, well, something is right or wrong. So that's where necessity comes from. So in the apple example, you might not need to, because, okay, you're just committing to an apple existing. But point here is, you need to prove that. Like, you need to prove it here.
You don't even know, bro. You're trying to rat so bad. You don't even know what you want to prove.
Yeah,
So No, Pussy. No.
No, can I finish?
What do you mean? No. Let me respond to that. Hold on, wait, chill. Let me respond to that real quick. One, he just realized, Yobi, you noticed that he gave the analogy, realized it was retarded, so at the end he tried to fix it by saying, which obviously you're just going to commit to the apple. Look, Pussy, obviously that's retarded. When you say that an apple exists, and then they tell you to justify that God exists, and you get them to agree that an apple exists, and then you say that an apple is what you define God as, then yes, they would say that God exists under your analytical criteria that you gave. But in response, they would just say something, let me finish. They would just say something along the lines of the following. That's not what God conventionally is, or that's not what I disagree with. I obviously agree with an apple existing, which I guess would qualify for your God. So sure, your God does exist. Your God exists. But when you say something along the lines that when it comes to self-interest is going to be a feature. Does that mean it's only a feature? It's obviously a feature that instantiates other properties. So it's an object / feature in which instantiates other properties, and then the properties are just something that we're able to considerably observe. So that's the argument. When you say that isn't a part of personhood, blah, 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 look, it's identical with essence. That's the entire point. Personhood, in my view, is identical with essence. So I don't see the argument as to why that doesn't exist. You have yet to give an argument or response. You just question back the entire time and then said that I question back with no argument as to why I question back. You just ask questions the entire time because you're retarded. No argument for pro-life. Let's conclude.
Okay, can I clarify first?
No. Okay, if you believe I
what do you mean? No. Can I clarify something? No, because you're confused about the apple analogy, because when you say, okay, well, you're just committing to apple to being a god, that's fine in itself. But then if you say that because I define apple as a god, therefore this apple also holds to every feature of a conventional god. So when you say, okay, well, this apple is omnipresent, omnipotent, etc. So when you say, okay, well, essence is actually part.
There is this empirical validation for
stop. When you say essence is identical to persons, and then that's what you define as something which you prescribe morality to, then I can agree to these features existing. I just don't agree with morality being described to that feature. That's the point. So when I'm asking for an argument, I'm saying, okay, well, you need to actually prove that why this is a person, or why this would be considered or constituted as a person. That's the whole fucking point.
Look, in response to that, the entire point is that there exists no more view, which seems to be consistently something that's boiled down to whenever someone's making a decision or coming up with a desire, at least when they're evaluating situations within society, and then there's no alternative that you propose. You haven't even gave an argument for pro-life yet, which is what I'm still waiting on, brother. So the entire point is this: you just been using the Yanni ride, which is not giving arguments, but rather attempting to question everything, which didn't work out for you. So I gave justification, which is motivation and intuition. And then we have empirical validation for their existing desire. Hold on, let me finish. Yeah, there exists an empirical validation for desires, preferences, etc. existing. If desires, preferences, etc. exist, then it is the case that my position, which is egoism, has the backbone They do exist, therefore has a backbone, some argument. Fuck. So it's just the case that we have two categories of desires: a conscious desire and then intuitive desire. And then obviously that's just going to be what people want. We can look into the autonomy of a human and see that there's certain features within a human which allows them to employ what they want. So yeah, can we conclude? Pussy?
Yes, push your conclusions now.
Well,
We've been on too long.
Was that not his conclusion? I thought that was his conclusion.
No,
Was that not his conclusion?
Okay, Pussy, who won, bro? Like,
I mean, he didn't say anything.
I need genuine conclusions. You guys were strong conclusions.
I go.
Wait, can I conclude first? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, nigga. Don't add anything new.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in conclusion, I just think that his ethical egoism view doesn't actually really make much sense because, one, it would lead to, and like he agreed to, let's say cases like, okay, well, rape is actually right and is prescribed and is actually recommended for the rapist to rape people because, okay, well, it'd be right for the rapist to rape people. And I said, okay, well, not only does that fall on his head because obviously we don't consider rape to be right or permissible generally, but also when, just pragmatically speaking, it doesn't really make sense because, for example, prisons don't work. Any sort of punishment doesn't work because you would have to actually consider like a bunch of opinions. And let's say the judge thinks that it's right and that he actually wants people to see other people getting raped, or he wants to see people getting raped. And then he says, okay, well, the guy did something right. Or he said, okay, well, whatever. Basically, you get the point. The desires there are conflicting. It doesn't really lead to any sort of conclusion. That's one. For the metaphysics, it's very simple. If persons doesn't exist, like I said prior, then, well, his whole view just falls on his head because you're either prescribing something to something which doesn't exist, which is persons. Therefore, ethical egoism is just false. Or you'll say that ethical egoism is just kind of some kind of error theory view where you say, okay, well, everything speaking or do with ethics is actually just wrong because there's no persons to speak of. So obviously, that's something which is going to be super unintuitive and retarded. And I mean, besides that, what I say? Okay, I also said that, okay, well, for the it also fails to capture whether or not the desires at the time of the action or while you're doing the action are going to be consistent with each other. So when you try to capture them and say whether or not an action is moral or immoral, it's going to be super hard to actually do it adequately. And he said, okay, well, yeah, you can just have a feeling, you can kind of have a posteriori justification about it where you just identify it. Well, just tell me that you identify something which I find hard to identify adequately doesn't tell me anything. That's what the question big was. And so, yeah, man, like he just failed on his side. Like it's terrible.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
We're concluding on the entire debate, correct?
I mean, we can talk about my flow argument, but I don't think
we can just base it off of who won this. Do you agree?
Sure, we can conclude that.
Okay.
The current. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. One, look, Pooch, I'm going to make it very simple. I said that the 7 billion people who exist in the world's opinions are irrelevant to the government. The government can make decisions, legally speaking, that may be independent of the desires, morally speaking. So him mentioning that there may be conflicting desires when it comes to evaluating a situation morally is irrelevant to the legal system because the legal system is the one that dishes out punishments and everything along the lines of that, which is determined by the government. That's irrelevant to the 7 billion opinions that exist. And I'm not going to say everything that I said in the debate. I just hope you tracked because I don't feel like doing that. Secondly, we can have temporal relativistic facts. So I can say at some point in time when I was running, my left leg was in front of my right leg. And then right after, meaning 1 second after, my right leg was in front of my left leg. It was true. The statement, which is the following, that my left leg was above my right leg or in front of my right leg was true at some point in time. However, it changed. Yes, that's how facts work. A lot of facts work like that. Temporal facts exist. Yes. So I can say at some point, it was morally okay to eat a candy bar because I had a desire which was compatible with eating the candy bar. And then guess what? After I realized and studied that candy bars actually deteriorate my health or something like that, I can remodel my preferences and form a new desire which is incompatible with my past one. And then that new desire is going to determine the action that I perform to be bad. Just because the action is coming from you doesn't mean that the action's okay. You can perform actions independent of your desire. The fuck? Thoroughly. The rate reductio isn't a reductio. He's asking a question which has an answer trivially under my position. I have the position that all dogs are black.
Is the dog beside you black?
Yes. My position is that the determination of morality, I apologize, the determination relative to morality of actions are all for the individual's self-interest. So if the person has an individual to rape someone, would it be okay for them to rape someone? Relativistically, yes. That's what my position says. But guess what? Most people don't think it's okay. Intuitively, most people don't think it's okay. consciously, most people don't think it's okay. Therefore, consensus-wise, it isn't okay. It is okay to me. It's okay to him. Sure, one person thinks it's okay. Wow, that doesn't really get anything. Another thing is desires can outweigh each other, so I can have two conflicting desires. One outweighs the other. The fuck, because I can make choices based upon which one maximizes my pleasure more. And then the personal identity point, the entire point is that there exists empirical validation that justifies both the existence of desires / self-interest / wills, and there exists empirical validation for the consideration of desires / the will / the self-interest of the individual. And then the self exists because there exists some type of modal referent, and then off of that modal referent, we can use an ontological parasite to validate the existence of something else. At least two things exist, therefore features exist, which he ultimately granted that features exist, meaning essence exists, and then essence is just going to hold desire. And then just to clarify, even if actions don't exist, they don't need to exist as long as there exists a desire which is intuitive or conscious, under my view. That's all I need, man. And then just to finish up real quick, it's just the case that although I did justify my theory of identity, even if I were to fail horribly on my theory of identity, it's just the case that all I need is my consideration when it comes to my theory of identity. So there exists a theory of identity in which is actual, and then there exists a considered theory of identity. My consideration when it comes to my theory of identity is the thing that needs to be true, at least for me to win that specific point, even though I justify both. So both of them are true. And then that's it, man.